It's not okay. We're live.
Good to go?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, good afternoon and welcome everybody to this Otago Regional Council meeting. Welcome to members of the public, welcome to staff, welcome to councillors and welcome to our visitors who are going to present at the public forum in a moment. We have two apologies from Councillors Deaker and Hobbs. I'll move that those apologies be, and seconded by Councillor Hope, I'll move those apologies be accepted. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. On Zoom, we have Councillor Forbes and Councillor Laws. So welcome to both of those councillors. Confirmation of the agenda. I'm not aware of any resolution that is going to be forthcoming with regards to any changes there. So moving on to conflict of interest, that's just a reminder to ensure that we're all aware of our responsibilities when a conflict arises.
I'm going to absent myself from...
Could I just get you to turn your microphone on, thanks, Hillary? I'm just going to go first names, forget about the surnames. So, Hillary?
That on? Yeah.
Yes.
I'm going to absent myself from 7-1.
Okay. Can we note that? Note that, Liz. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
No other conflict of interest flags there? Everyone comfortable? Okay. Moving on to the public forum, we've got Bryce McKenzie and three others, and in a moment I'll just ask you, Bryce, to introduce your colleagues. And just, I suppose, the question is, you're here speaking as a individual, or as that group of farmers. So it's just really the question around standing orders. It's normally 5 minutes for, well, it is 5 minutes for an individual, but if it's a group, we're a bit more lenient with 10 minutes.
Okay, yeah, no, we're here representing Groundswell New Zealand, which was born after the Gore tractor protest. A lot of active people, including farmers and urban people, got together and decided that we should take a step further and start fighting some of these new regulations. So, do you want me to introduce?
Please, thank you.
This is Laurie Patterson, who's a founding member, Paul Butson, who's a farmer up at Oamaru, and Jamie Chittick, a farmer from South Otago.
Thank you. So if you'd just like to proceed and present your submission.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, well, we come here representing the rural community, farming families who are concerned about the impact that the freshwater national policy regulations will have on the mental health, well-being and economy of Otago. As I've already explained, this was born out of the tractor protest in Gore, where we had over 100 tractors present from farmers that were not happy with the new regulations. So we understand that you as council have had these regulations forced on you, as we have had them forced on ourselves. This, however, does not take away the responsibility from yourselves, as you will be charged by government with implementing these ridiculous rules. If I may point out a few obvious flaws in the regulations as pertaining to southern New Zealand. Number one is sowing dates for pasture and crops. We believe this is totally unworkable, as it is linked to a calendar date day, 1st of November till 2024, and then the 1st of October from then on. Rural communities have at all times endeavoured to have their crops and pastures sown as soon as practical, because it is in their best interest to have the ground producing rather than sitting barren. Ground temperatures and moisture levels have always dictated sowing dates and always will. Having a deadline for crops to be sown will also add undue stress on farmers and contractors. Winter grazing, this is mostly to do with hoof prints. There must be no pugging equal hoof prints deeper than 5 centimetres over 50% of the paddock, and no single instance of pugging deeper than 20 centimetres anywhere in the paddock except around gateways or permanent fixtures. One extreme overnight weather event and chances are cattle farmers will be in breach of these regulations. Also, the 10-degree slope factor has a number of questions around it. Is there any science to say this is where it should be? Having both flat and rolling country for myself, I don't winter on the flats as they're flood prone and I don't want to lose the topsoil down the river. 3 is mental health and wellbeing. We as a group have a concern for the health of the rural people of Otago. Families are feeling the strain, not just from the weather, but also from the impending regulations that will do nothing to enhance water quality, but will impact severely on their ability to be financially viable. So where to from here?
Okay. Does that thing go?
Yes. Yep.
I'm likely to blow everyone out of the room. Okay, so following the tractor trek of 2 to Gore that became the tractor trek of 120 tractors, and indeed would have been more but for the fact that it was one of the few fine days that week, we have received a lot of communication from farmers and other urban supporters in the region. The overwhelming, in fact 100% views that we have received are that the sowing date, pugging and slope cultivation rules are simply unworkable and show no appreciation of farming in Southland, West Otago and South Otago, an area that punches well above its weight in output, jobs and earnings for the good of the local and New Zealand economy. Farmers are quite unequivocal they simply are not going to comply with these daft rules, and as the weather this spring has shown, particularly around sowing dates, they are totally unrealistic. Appreciating that central government have thrust the burden of policing these rules onto the regional councils like yourselves, we would like to know what the ORC is intending to do about non-compliance by its ratepayers, who are also, I would think, major funders of your organisation. Will you prosecute them, or will you in fact turn a blind eye? Because your rural ratepayers will undoubtedly be thinking, having done their very best with the environment by altering many practices in consultation with ORC field staff for the best, while still having to run a viable business, then being nixed by the weather, then facing prosecution from your organisation is a bridge too far, and they may then be forced to take steps of their own. Perhaps a good example of what farmers face continually is reflected in the recent election, where the best laid and long signalled election date, read sowing dates, pugging, etc., were suddenly compromised by the coronavirus pandemic, read spring storms, and logic required that the date be moved, read common sense, but funnily enough, this was all achieved without threats of prosecution, and we only have an election every 3 years while farmers face the weather every day. Therefore, we would like to know, is the ORC, through the Local Bodies Association or whatever, going to stand up to the government over these unworkable rules for their constituents, i.e. their ratepayers, who are going to be severely affected in their businesses by this, particularly, as Bryce has pointed out, young farming families? Will you then say that you are not going to prosecute under this regime, or are the rural ratepayers going to have to stand up to the ORC over this issue that clearly affects their property rights? We appreciate you guys are the meat and the sandwich here, but would like some absolute clarity on what your position is, please.
Okay, thank you very much, Laurie, Bryce, Jamie and Paul. You've got nothing to add. You're here in moral support. Yeah, no, good as gold. I suppose I've got a question and then I'll make a comment, but the question is from the organisation's point of view that you represent, the overall essential freshwater reform is based on improving water quality, and based on that principle, have you got any comment to make?
Yes, definitely. We can't see any scientific evidence to prove that the regulations that are going to be enforced will actually do anything to enhance water quality. And the reason for that is that nobody can predict when there's going to be major storms. Just because a paddock's owned by a certain date, that may be the date that we're going to get these storms or rain events. There's just no way you can judge when's the best time to do anything. You can only go by what's best practice at the time.
Okay. In a moment, I'll go to the Chief Executive, but my comment is that certainly the road shows that we've been involved in, and one or two of you were at Clinton the other night, or other morning, the Otago Regional Council's approach has been a pragmatic approach, very much focused on communicating where the situation is with the freshwater reforms, because we know it's a little bit fluid. There's already been some changes and potentially there could be more. We don't know, but we know there's conversations happening with sector groups, etc., with ministers and their staff. So very much a focus on communication education and collaboration. That's where we're at. But I'll ask Sarah whether there's anything that you want to cover off from the organisation's point of view.
Just said it.
Yep, no, you're right.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll just... Oh, okay,
Can I
Bryce.
ask a question or make a
Yes.
statement? Has council looked at combining with Environment Southland and ECAN? We know that Environment Southland is definitely fighting this battle tooth and nail for changes. Have the regional council considered joining forces with them?
We've certainly had conversations with both regional councils to the north and south. We've certainly said on matters with of common interest, we will work together to lobby whoever, and in this case, central government. So we've indicated that we would certainly work together. Yes, to answer your question. I'll just, before I go to Hilary, it's not an opportunity to debate these issues. I think it's really questions for the delegation around any clarity about their submission to us. So I don't want us to spend all afternoon debating the issue. Hilary.
I'm just reading here briefly from what the Prime Minister said on Tuesday. The freshwater regulations were vital to immediately stop further degradation. She did acknowledge there might be room to move on some of the rules. As we get further into implementation of this package, if some aspects are found to be impractical on the ground or unclear, ministers will receive that advice with a view to making the regulations workable. Are you members of people who are giving advice to ministers about that?
Not so much, no. No, we're
That suggests that there's an openness to listen, but you haven't.
we would hope we'd be able to influence the people that are in the tent, so to speak.
Yeah, thank you. Any further questions? Kevin.
Yeah, gentlemen, and I did discuss a wee bit with you that there's at Clinton we had beef and lamb as part of your sector were there, and one comment that was made there was certainly that submissions to beef and lamb on these reforms were sparse. In fact, they'd only had about 50 from the whole country, and I just wonder you as a group and as your members, and with that openness described here, that whether that would be a pretty good positive approach for you to attack that website and get some stuff on there. We know that our staff are certainly pushing those comments through, so it would be great to see that number jump from 50, because 50 over the whole country doesn't seem to be many, and we know that there is more feeling than just 50. So
just on slope.
We've had personal contact with Beef and Lamb. Andrew Morrison, we've been in constant contact with him, so he probably hasn't got it in the format you're talking about, but he's certainly got it by the year.
yeah, so it's if I just highlight there that probably what gets recorded further up is the actual submissions made by individuals, and even though your group might represent 100 or 200 or whatever, it would probably be a pain, I know, but I'm just saying that's probably that's where the count would start.
Is that just for that lowland slope map?
Yeah, but it's a very good start to...
Yeah, but it probably doesn't affect as many people, and a lot of Southland is flat. I've been onto that site and I've done my place.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Brian, Kate, and then we'll go to Michael on Zoom.
Yeah, thank you for coming here. Thank you for telling us your thoughts. With approximately a third of our waterways in Otago either classified as poor water quality or fair water quality, do you accept in principle that, that there's work that needs to be done in relation to water quality, whether it's urban, whether it's rural? Do you accept that the status quo has to change? I'm not saying that, arguing against the detail that you've said, but do you accept that the status quo needs to change? We need to do things differently.
Yes, agree 100%.
Okay.
Kate.
I've just gone on to the low slope submission form, and it's actually interesting. You can't put in anything except for your location. It doesn't actually allow you to explain the situation, so I can understand the frustration. I had been meaning to investigate that earlier. I actually want to understand how farmers are in the mental health space at the moment just about this, and what you guys are doing, because can you explain what you're doing then? And then I want to just ask a bit more, if that's okay.
Okay, the tractor protest was actually largely done for farmers' mental health. Simple as that. Farmers needed an outlet. So that was, of course it was to do with the regulations, but it was actually an outlet to farmers to have a release of showing how frustrated they were. So yeah, we're really concerned about the mental health, especially on young farmers. Okay.
I appreciate your frustrations on the low slope stuff, but I think what came out clearly again in Clinton is that, and encouragement would be, if you've got photos, send them to MFE, but also send them to Beef and Lamb, and I personally would be delighted to get an idea of what those issues are, and whether it's the pugging or whether it's the slope and what that looks like. I think the better informed we all are, but it gives them an action, and it informs us, because I think it's actually photos rather than putting a farm map, but that's the problem with desktop exercises haven't helped this so far.
Question?
Yeah.
Is there a question?
Yeah, I was into John Bazette, as you would understand. Is that something that you can do? Because it is that positive action, and what other positive action could we be doing to give people an out?
Okay, first thing is combining with other councils or environment to put sensible options to government would be one. And the second question was, what can we do for mental health? Was it?
Yeah.
I guess support is the big thing. And then I guess the only support farmers are really looking for right now is some understanding of, nobody wants to sit with something over the head that they know through no actions of their own they may not be able to fulfil. And that's exactly the way it's sitting, is that you can go to bed not a lawbreaker and wake up one.
Thank you.
Okay. Michael?
First of all, my apologies for being a disembodied voice today, but I'm really interested that 5 days ago, I think the Minister of Agriculture, Damien O'Connor, mentioned that there's still quite a bit of work underway to fine-tune the regulations to ensure that they meet the practical concerns, some of which you've espoused this afternoon. Shouldn't we wait strategically, and this is my question to the submitters, until we see what the results of those, or that practical work with federated farmers and others has been in terms of tweaking these rules and regulations?
No. If we sit and wait, with all due respect, if we sit and wait, there's already a perception in the public that people are letting go, and this is from farmers that are outside, perhaps understanding what is happening. It's already flashing up on social media all the time. What's happened to the people that are fighting this? And that's the problem. If you back off and wait, the chances are nothing's going to get done.
Well, at the same time, you're fighting, aren't you, a windmill? Because at the moment, or tilting at windmills, you're being told by everybody, including your member organisation, Federated Farmers, that those talks are underway, and that changes are likely and will come to be of more practical effect. Surely you should wait until you see what the new regulations are before you get back on your tractors.
Well, just to correct that, it's not Federated Farmers. They've been locked out of the discussions and still are locked out. And I guess most of us would consider them to be our spokespeople. So the people that are in the tent, so to speak, discussing these are paid representatives of our bodies, Beef and Lamb and Dairy NZ. So they were originally set up, as you probably know, to do research and development, not speak on behalf of farmers.
That's true. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Brian, you had a further question,
Yeah.
I believe.
Yeah, and you may or may not want to answer this, but, you know, my previous question, we sort of accepted that things need to be done differently, yeah? Have you got any ideas from your perspective about what should be done differently in the future to address the water degradation we've got?
How much time have you got? There's lots of things.
Because we haven't been successful to date.
No, that's not entirely true. Some areas haven't been successful,
Correct.
and the reason is because there was no science to say what would improve water quality. Now we're starting to get some science. We're starting to understand what will improve water quality. So there's plenty. Mitigation has got to be the number one thing, and farmers have to understand that they need to mitigate. So that's a whole educational area there. The farmers that do understand that they need mitigation are doing it. So it's just a chain reaction, and I think that we're going to get the end goal of better water quality anyway. We're already starting to get there, but we have to have everybody on board and coming with it. And regulating is not going to get them on board. It's going to actually alienate them.
Thank you. Okay, well, one last question.
No, I don't have a question.
Carmen.
I just have a statement, if I may be able to make it.
Okay.
It's just simply to say that I am sympathetic to you. We just planted out our grass 3 weeks ago at Middlemarch, and then this big winds came and just wiped the whole lot out. So Mother Nature throws a lot of things at us that we have no control of. So I do hear you. Thank you.
Yeah. So, Laurie?
I mean, there's a lot of talk about what are farmers actually doing, and just to look at what we do on our farm, and it's no different than what most other people are probably doing too, but in the last 5 years we've changed how we do things a lot, because there's been a lot of education come out from, ORCs and things like, and Environment Southland on how to do things. So we now do feed down the hills when we're doing that. We've obviously fenced cows out of creeks, and we're planting where possible. Can't plant everywhere. Every paddock that we put in a winter crop now, we aerate, and that means that the water will go down and not run off. And but that's expensive. The machine's 20,000, the tractor's 150,000. That's right. And we're burning diesel. And we don't plough, obviously, surface waterways. One of the other things we do is, and this is where things I think are going a bit wrong, on our property we have about 5 paddocks each year probably put into winter crop, and we have them spread all around the farm. And they are up on slopes and that sort of thing, and there's no reason why you can't run slopes if you actually have, filter areas and stuff like that. We're not in the North Island where they have ash soils when it rains and the whole lot goes down the gully. That's not the case. But one of the reasons for spreading it around, and that's the danger, because our property's got flats and then some hilly stuff, we put it all on the flats, we're in danger of something going wrong with the weather. So spreading the risk, we've got it spread around the farm in 5 different places. We get our paddocks out of crop and sown in grass as soon as we possibly can, because right now we're starting to come into a thunderstorm time over the next 5 or 6 weeks. So we want the grass in the paddock and growing to hold the whole thing together. And the other thing we get is thunderstorms can be going through here, and that bit over there can be dry. So by spreading it around the property, we've taken the risk out. If we put all that on the flat, we've actually put the risk right there. And it's going to have exactly, unfortunately, the opposite effect to what we're trying to achieve. It's the practicality, things like that the government seems to have lost, and we're actually putting a petition to Parliament in the next 2 days that Parliament debates these rules and rewrites them, because they are clearly unworkable in Southland. I mean, don't think that we don't want water quality. We do. We actually, that's what we want.
Yeah, and I believe on Friday of this week, the regional sector group, Minister Parker, is, I think, meeting via Zoom. So there is a direct link there for the regional sector group, which represents all of regional councils across the country. So another opportunity to speak directly to the Minister. And look, just on behalf of the Otago Regional Council, thank you very much for being here today. You've all travelled a reasonable distance from either South or West Otago, so we really appreciate that. And it's a presentation that, you know, obviously comes from the heart, but it's also got that practical element as well. So thank you for that.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, moving on to item 5, the confirmation of the minutes from the 28th of October 2020 council meetings. Would someone like to move that? True and correct, moved by from Hillary, seconded by Brian. Any discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Actions? Any comments there? Everyone comfortable? I will cover off the KPIs in the non-public section of the meeting. Everyone comfortable? Okay. Moving on to item 7. So we've got 7.1, 7.2 and 7.3, which are all interconnected, so to speak. But we'll deal with 7.1 first, and current responsibilities in relation to drinking water. This paper is provided to inform the Council on the Otago Regional Council's current responsibilities in relation to drinking water.
Chairman, I'm going to step out of this meeting. This one as well. Do
you want that noted? Thank you, Liz. Welcome, Kyle and Gwyneth. I just need to say that this is very much all the responsibilities that this organisation has via the various acts, whether it's RMA, the Health Act, Local Government Act, etc. Is there any comment either of you would like to make, Gwyneth?
No, I think you probably covered it in terms of this is a package of papers that we wanted to bring as a package, as an update. One was, the first one's on the back of a request for more information. Wanted to update you in terms of the reforms and what's happening with Otago and Southland, and also the option to do a submission for the water bill. Yeah.
Thank you. Kyle?
No, same thing, probably phrased a little bit differently. One's about what we currently do, one about what we might need to do in the future in relation to taumata arawai, and parallel to that, what the government's doing to change the system, I guess, to better implement the changes that they'd like to see through that too. So as Gwyneth said, and yourself as well, it is a package, it's all related, and some of this work was overlapping, I guess, in terms of responding to a request from Council to come back with further information, and the changes that are being made through taumata arawai as well. And it's also a follow-up to a submission that we made to the taumata arawai bill late last year as well.
Excellent, thank you. And the proposed recommendation is that we receive the report. So questions from councillors? Kate.
Congratulations, dense, but really interesting. And you've managed to get your head around a substantial number of issues. The question I've actually got is for you. I'm finding it really hard to pair off a question on any one report my notes are mainly on the third report. Can we be generous about,
okay,
if we don't ask a question in the first one, can we ask it in the third one, and it may have related back to it? Because
on one condition.
What?
That the questions, we're not going to repeat the exercise when we get to 7.2 and 7.3. Now, I'm being facetious, but yeah, no, I get that, because as you say, they're all linked. So yes, I'm comfortable with that.
Good, because I'm just finding it hard to work out which ones, which. 7.1. The map on page 18 of our agenda.
Yes.
I've got two questions. The first question is understanding how accurate this information is to how many people actually register their wells, for example, for groundwater, and how accurate or certain you are of that?
Yeah. So in relation to the data on this map.
Yep.
That's from MFE. So these are drinking water suppliers who are big enough to register with MFE. Mm-hmm. Your second question is in relation to how many people register their wells.
Yeah.
That's something that is slightly separate. So under Section 14 of the RMA, it's deemed to be permitted essentially by the RMA to take water for your own personal use. If you're taking water from a groundwater source, under our regional plan, you're required to get a consent for the bore, not for the take. So we know where the bores are, and so long as they meet the conditions of our requirements, and they can say, well, I'm taking it as for my domestic or stock watering use, as long as we know where the bore is, that's all we know.
So the water plan's been in since 19-something rather.
That's right.
But a lot of the bores would have been in earlier, and I'm just wondering, I'd be impressed if you knew where all the pre-RMA ones are.
So as part of the work across council, because this ended up being quite a lot bigger than I was anticipating when I commenced it, is that is a concern. We don't necessarily know where every single bore is, and there's any number of anecdotes that we can chat about that. But we are getting better at that. Surface water takes, for example, is completely different. We don't require it is permitted under the same section of the RMA, and there's no resource consent requirement to pop a pipe into the stream and start pumping it out, for example. So we do have better information about where bores are, but we have almost no information about where people are taking from natural water courses for their own water supply.
Thank you for that clarity, because it actually does affect the submission, because you've been really good on your submission about including some of that stuff, and I just wanted to get my head around how. So, thank you. It's all I think on this report, but I might,
Thank you. Brian.
Thank you for the report. Is the ORC fulfilling its responsibilities for drinking water?
Yes, I believe we are. Yep. If you know of any instances where we're not, I'd be interested to hear about it.
I'm just putting that on the table. Are we? I think the most important thing to do, I think, is to provide, somewhere in this report it says, a high quality source water is the best way to ensure safe drinking water is supplied. So a third of our waterways are either poor or fair. We have septic tank issues. We don't even talk really a lot about septic tank issues, but we can say that we're fulfilling our responsibilities.
I'll try and help.
Question.
Well, no, the title of it is responsibility.
Exactly
I'm just asking, are we fulfilling ours?
I think we are fulfilling our responsibilities to the best of our knowledge at the moment. I suspect that there are parts of the region that we don't know sufficient about that mean that we may, from time to time, miss something. But I think our work at the moment, for example, when we do our state of the environment monitoring, if we come up with an issue that arises with source water quality, then we have an action plan. We have used that on a number of occasions now. We used it in the lower Waitaki aquifer situation when we had E. coli there. We used it in the Queensbury subdivision where we had a bore that had arsenic in it. And so we've improved from where we were, say, 3 years ago when we had the information, but we didn't actually do anything with it. Now we actually get the information, and if we need to, we have an action plan and can respond accordingly. On those occasions when we respond, at the moment at least, we have engaged with the local DHB, public health unit of the local DHB, to make sure that we provide joint advice and the best advice possible for those who might be impacted by the particular issue at source.
Yeah, and thank you. And through the chair, I suspect, there's a risk. You could do a risk matrix around our responsibilities. And I suspect some parts of the region will have higher risk than others. So I suspect it's not a blanket yes or no answer. Yeah?
Our responsibility is our responsibility in terms of in terms of the responsibility to treat water, where that's consenting a take is a different thing.
The best thing that regional councils can do is provide high quality source water. That's what the report says, to ensure safe drinking water is supplied.
Yeah.
And also, regional councils have a duty to share information with suppliers and consumers and use any power they have to ensure drinking water is safe. When not safe, then safe supplies are stored without delay.
And that's what the action plan
Sarah's just talked about the process we go undertake every time we're aware of information.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Carmen, then Michael on Zoom, and then we're going back to Kate for a question.
Thank you. I have two questions. The first one was to carry on about Councillor Scott said about septic tanks. Is it our intent that we would like to talk to all the TAs in the next 4 or 5 years and build that register up of where septic tanks are around our region? It does say in here that we've got limited knowledge, if you like. We want to obviously improve it. We want to make... So that's my first thing, because that's, to me, is the key, isn't it?
So we do have a septic tank monitoring regime. Kyle, did you want to review it?
I believe we have Melanie online from... She might not be online yet. If she wants to pipe up, she can. There is a map on page 24 of the agenda taken from a report in relation to septic tank density mapping, which did highlight a number of concerns and issues with the approach that we've taken in our regulatory approach to septic tanks, particularly where in most of Otago, because rainwater fed supplies are much rarer because of the climatic conditions, if you've got a septic tank and a bore within increasingly smaller properties, they are more difficult to maintain safely. One of the issues with that is that the current legislation and regulatory system has been identified as being relatively disparate and weak, which is the whole reason behind the reforms as well. But also in both the current legislation and proposed legislation, domestic self-suppliers are excluded. The reason in the current legislation is deemed to be because people are making that choice. Can argue whether that is something that people are truly able to choose or not, to treat their wastewater or better treat their wastewater and also choose how their water quality is being achieved. But it is a situation that exists and will require very significant investment to fix over time as well. So the report from that I've cribbed this particular map from is worth a read.
One of the things that we do to try and deal with that is make sure that we, if we do have an issue with drinking water, we're also supplying information at the same time around how to keep your wellhead safe and avoid contamination.
And just to follow on that, we do that down to the single self. We don't. In terms of our response, when we do receive information, we act no matter the number of people being supplied from that source.
Just before I go back to Carmen, I just want to check with Melanie whether she wants to make any comment. Pretty important issue, so I just want to check. Melanie, any comment?
Sorry, this is my first time chatting at a council meeting. I just wanted to say that any septic tank discharge that's there's a number of criteria, but the most pertinent one is any septic tank discharge under 2,000 litres per day is permitted under our current water plan. So my understanding is it's only septic tanks that have resource consents that are monitored.
Well done. Thank you very much for that, Melanie, and special welcome to you for your attending your first council meeting.
Thank you.
Carmen.
I just want to go back to page 30. And you've got number 56, which is education materials now available on OSC's website, proactively supplied to known bore owners where council monitoring identifies. There's two questions here I want to ask. Well, first of all, I want to probe a bit more. We have a lot of people now choosing to live in the country, and we have a lot of people that don't know anything about what they've got, whether they've actually got a septic tank, whether they've got a bore. And again, it comes back to what we said this morning. Not everybody's on website. Not everybody knows this. I'd love us to see a better way of communicating what we've got. We have a very, very good picture here of a bore on our OSC website. I had a look at it this morning, and it's very good. But we need to get that out to a lot of people. Is there some way we can do that through our water lines that we have here?
I think we have done that on occasion, but we can. Yes.
I've had a lot of people ask me in a lot of rural areas that we've been into saying, I don't know anything about my bore. I know I go to the regional council. I don't have a website. Where can I go? Could we make that information, please, a bit more
Sure.
available?
Sure, we can do that.
Thank you.
Problem.
Thanks, Sarah. Now, just a moment, Brian. I'm going to Michael on Zoom, then back to Kate, and then Alexa, and then Brian.
Okay, first of all, it's a really good report, and I think the submission to Parliament's excellent. But can I just sorry, I'm getting a lot of feedback here. Is there something wrong?
No,
we can't hear that.
That's right. Okay, it's cool. Can I just understand this? The primary responsibility of the Water Services Bill falls on the TAs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we are going to be required to monitor the TAs under the Water Services Bill, that they're doing everything right. Have I got that thrust right? And we will have increased monitoring responsibilities.
Not quite right, Councillor. So our future role is essentially more or less the same as it is at the moment, in that our responsibility primarily lies with water when it is in the environment. Once it is taken by a drinking water supplier or anyone else, it becomes the drinking water supplier's responsibility to make sure that that water ends up coming out of the tap in a way that is safe. Taumata Arawai will be monitoring compliance of those drinking water suppliers with the relevant drinking water standards. But one implication of the reforms is that many of the small drinking water suppliers will now be one big drinking water supplier. So it may be that our relationship with them changes somewhat. One of the other implications is that because of the new requirements, there are existing requirements, but they're being more stringently enforced and backed up with pretty severe penalties for non-compliance, is that many of the small non-TA suppliers might seek to essentially turn off the tap in terms of, a small proportion of their water is taken for domestic supply. That could be an issue for those consumers, and in a roundabout way becomes an issue for us, as we'll have to permit or provide in some other way take from the environment to meet those needs as well. Does that clarify that?
Yes, it does. Thank you. But Taumata Arawai, that's a really interesting organisation, because I don't think it's up yet, is it?
Yes, it is.
Taumata Arawai itself exists. The Water Services Bill is the regulation that they will be implementing.
Oh, all right. So are they responsible for ensuring that the TAs do their job rather than us then?
Yes.
So there are very few resource or staffing implications for us from this bill.
The implications for us will be that we have a more directive responsibility to monitor water quality, both generally and specifically in relation to where those water bodies are sources. So one of the things I wanted to get across was that almost all of our major water bodies and many of our smaller water bodies are also water sources for drinking water. That dovetails relatively nicely into water quality outcomes, but remembering the submission from our farming community this morning, and also those urban communities that again have to pay for sewage system upgrades and septic tank improvements, There is a big cost involved with that as well.
So where are Taumata Arawa currently, or ROI currently in Otago? Do they have an office here now?
No.
No.
So Taumata Arawai are basically under establishment. So there's a bill that established the organisation, and then the Water Services Bill effectively gives them their powers, if you like. There is an interim chief executive who's been employed for 18 months, and that's Bill Bayfield, the former chief executive of Environment Canterbury. And at the moment, they are working through the details of the bill, but also talking with the sector more generally. There is an idea that Taumata Arawai staff may be domiciled inside of regional councils, but that's a relationship matter between the particular agencies. But certainly the Water Services Bill, I guess, defines the scope of the powers that Taumata Arawai will have.
Okay, thank you. Ta.
Thank you. So, Kate.
Thank you. I'm asking this question because of what Councillor Brian asked, and when probably best referenced in paragraph 44, where you've got some townships that you are going to do some monitoring bores in, and I'm just wondering how you got those. I know that the Middlemarch community and the Strathtyre Community Board have asked for years to have their water protected, to no action from the ORC. I'm just wondering, that is an area that is bore water for the township. Is that and this is that nuance. I don't understand how some places are in and some places are out.
I might just have to pass that to Melanie in case she knows. I've collated a lot of stuff.
Thanks. It's the nitty-gritty detail that's going to be the winner here.
But Melanie, also, if you don't know, I have to take it on notice.
That's fine.
I think it's probably a combination of conversations across a number of teams in council as well. So yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I don't have an answer for that.
We'll take that.
Oh no, and that's absolutely fine. That's why it's almost brutal asking that question in this environment. I just wanted to, because I think there may be other examples that we need to make sure are
Sarah
included.
may be able to help here.
I don't know for certain, but when I look at these, what it says to me is that these places are areas where there has been increasing growth, and also there are not independent sewage treatment systems. So everyone's on a septic tank, and there may not be plans currently for a municipal system to be put in place. So, for example, we might have had Clyde in there, but actually Clyde is transitioning now to a municipal sewage treatment system.
Thank you, and that clarifies that issue. It doesn't actually make sure that the water is safe, though. And I appreciate they're two different. So I'd be interested, maybe we need to consider if there's another category where there is a sewage system, but actually there's no protection of the water.
Right.
Aquifer anyway, because
I do believe we monitor the Middlemarch bore as part of our state of the environment monitoring. So if there was an issue, you would know about it.
So it doesn't protect it.
That's right. So I think just make maybe a bit more generalised in terms of Sarah. There'll be various reasons. They could be a quality or a quantity reason, and that's why I think I'll take it on notice. As in terms of how we've come about in terms of those as a priority, because I know that there's particular aquifers and basins with particular issues, some being quality, some being quantity.
Yep, no, that's great. And my other one is, and I just wanted to tease this out, people who own or choose to live in the rural areas is one thing about their security, but if you rent or are a farm worker in a rural area and you have to take more or less what you get, that's why, and I was going to raise this later, but because Councillor Hope raised it, where I think you're going with the submission later is that actually every individual place should, if it's supplied, especially if it's not the landowner, a bit like a tenant should have insulation, they should have good water. Am I correct?
Yeah, so there's two issues there.
Carl,
did I turn it off? on. One is a definitional one in the proposed water bill and the Taumata ROA as well. So it separates domestic self-suppliers from all other sorts of suppliers. So if you're a farmer, for example, and you've got two houses on your farm, you're not a domestic self-supplier. No. So, there's a threshold thing there. But also they don't go to the next level and say, a household is the smallest, least capable water supplier of all. And in situations like that, like you say, even new people moving into a new house that presumably they've done some due diligence on don't know how it works or how to make sure it works or where to go to find out whether that water is good and what to do about it if it isn't. There's a bunch of issues there. The suggestion in the submission is to recognise that challenge and enable Taumata ROI to focus its efforts on the smallest and least capable suppliers, being households, without necessarily imposing the stringency of monthly reporting and that kind of thing on them that applies to not self-suppliers.
Right, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, Alexa.
Thank you for that report, people. It's a really, really good report and it was pretty clear. But I have got a couple of questions. Some of them have been answered on the way, so I'm just trying to sort out what hasn't. But I'm wondering one thing. Are we going to need to create another box to tick for people who seek consent for other things? I mean, how do we sort of make sure that whatever it is anybody's planning to do with water isn't going to impact drinking supplies? Is that something else we're going to have to get involved in?
That is something that we should be doing already.
And we are, okay.
So, So under the NES sources of human drinking water, that's something we have to take into account. But the size and scale of the supplies that we worry about is slightly different from the scale in these as well. And it's not clear in the bill, and this is something else that I think we might want to submit on as well. Do we need to take account of aquifers that are used, by a bunch of self-suppliers, for example, if we were going to, say, put a water bottling plant or irrigation tank from that aquifer?
And the other thing, so that's all good. I think I kind of know where you're going with that. But dealing with situations where groundwater is both supply and receiver of wastewater, so it's drinking water supply and receiver. So is that going to impact us much, or are we already doing that too, looking after that?
Yeah, Melanie might want to jump in here, but my understanding is that the permitted activity standards don't necessarily differentiate too much around that. So, Melanie, do you want to?
Just after speaking with Matt around that, we had a similar conversation. Basically, if someone has a septic tank on their land and a drinking water source on their land, they've effectively given themselves affected party approval. So it's not considered if both the discharge and the take are within their own property. And that's something I guess we need to keep in mind.
Pretty dodgy.
Yeah, pretty dodgy. But there's quite a bit of that going on around the place as far as I can tell. And my last question was with Taumata ROI as the regulator, I'm wondering kind of what's the nature of our relationship with them. Do they take on all the compliance and monitoring of things like the groundwater, as we were just discussing, or is it up to us to ensure that we've secured the safety of that water supply? I think you kind of say that it is up to us to do that, but are we overseen by them? What's our relationship with Taumata ROI?
So our relationship with Taumata ROI is that we're both regulators. Our role as a regulator is largely focused towards the environmental water. Taumata ROI's regulation is focused to once that water is taken for drinking water purposes. So drinking water suppliers, and this may apply to Middlemarch as well, should be regularly testing the water that they're taking and making sure that what comes out the other end of the pipe is potable and safe. Those drinking water suppliers have to provide the information that they test and a whole bunch of other stuff, management plans, risk assessments and that kind of thing to Taumata Arawai. One of the things that we have to do under the Water Services Bill is specifically monitor water bodies that are water sources. And that may mean that we need to do a little bit more in that space. The current state of the environment monitoring approach that we take overlaps quite a lot with drinking water requirements, but not 100%. So we might need to have more sensors or take account of more attributes. And together, the system is supposed to be working better. So Taumata Arawai's focus is really focusing on regulating drinking water, and our role is making sure that that water is good as possible before it gets taken for drinking water, and a whole range of other things. So awesome. The idea is that we should be working together, but with quite different focuses.
The one last thing is the diagram, figure 7, that says we have to take measures to prevent contaminants from entering the source water. So that'll be, is that something we already do? Or we have to step up on that a bit too?
Yeah, so that diagram is taken from the MFE guidance for councils around the current NES on human drinking water sources.
I'm not sure whether Alexa heard that because I think the microphone's currently off.
Oh, sorry, tell me again. I didn't.
So, figure 7 is taken from the existing MFE. Ministry for the Environment guidance on applying the current NES on human drinking water sources. So that essentially says that we shouldn't permit things that will impact on the quality at the point of source of take.
So we're already doing that.
We are, yes, but we might need to have a greater focus on that.
Up the game a little bit, especially if we have to do some sort of treatment before it gets somewhere.
Yeah.
But that will be somebody else's responsibility. Thank you very, very much for your patience with those questions.
Cheers. Brian.
Yeah, great. On pages 44, I think 42 to about 45, it gives specific data on the network supplies across Otago in relation to the TA schemes. And if you look at it in relation to drinking water standards, for example, there's 48 fails and 7 meet standards. For a variety of reasons. Even the DCC, which I assumed would meet the drinking water standard, they had a fail on the basis that their E. coli had exceeded maximum acceptable values and therefore failed the bacterial standards for 300 people, so maybe a proportion of the utility. So there it is. Should TAs be concerned? Should we be concerned? The ORC?
So I think we've just outlined our responsibility as a regulator is not compliance against drinking water standards. But perhaps data like this, if it was replicated all over New Zealand, might go to some way to explaining why these reforms and...
Okay, so the ORC shouldn't be concerned, but what about TAs? Is this the impetus for the three waters? Because basically they've dropped the ball.
One word, Havelock North.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, I know that Havelock, there was a specific...
Not just Havelock North.
So the whole... So my understanding is there's a fundamental system failure across three waters in New Zealand.
Yeah.
And that is what's driving the reform. So Havelock North was an impetus, but,
there's
It's more
also
endemic than that.
Yeah, there's the relationship between the quality of the infrastructure and the standard of treatment that's being delivered, the amount of investment that's occurred over many years or hasn't occurred over many years. All of those sorts of issues, as I understand it.
Just a point to note on the actual pass fail. It's a 100% pass rate, or you fail. So one instance of not meeting any particular standard would be recorded as a fail here. The idea being that you should always have high quality drinking water coming out the other end. So it's a high bar to meet. The point of including this is, as you said, to highlight that there are issues and the idea behind the whole push to improve them. This has also been presented to you before. I clipped this from another report, and the latest one actually shows some significant improvement against this. So happy to share that if required. But this is also essentially data that the suppliers who are shown on the maps elsewhere in the report have to report into the Ministry of Health at the moment. And they will be doing this on a monthly basis as proposed under the new bill rather than annually.
Thank you.
Cool. Carmen.
Thank you. Some of it's been answered because the protozoa is your cryptosporidium and your giardia, and I know it's very, very stringent. So all I was going to say was, when you get this and you've got the new bill coming in and we're working, will we see this sort of thing, but instead of it saying Health Act, will it say the water bill, and then you'll still have your drinking water standards beside it? So there'll just be some tweaking of name changes. And then, well, for example, here you've got Watahuna. It just says Watahuna Rural did not take enough E. coli samples at frequent enough intervals. So, and didn't make the appropriate changes. So that's the sort of thing you expect to see change with the new bill in as well. There's more teeth to it. Is that what you're picking? I know it doesn't affect us because it's the take, but when you still read this, you're trying to find out.
Well, I think there's some more teeth. Yes. There's a shift in responsibility from health to taumata.
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah.
But I think the other piece is that supplies that haven't been, if you like, in the tent, in the regulation tent before, will be in the tent also.
And therefore, Mrs. Gardner, too, the other thing that you have to have some sympathy is for probably some of the TAs in our whole region, are going to probably have to spend money upgrading, and I guess that's where the buck will lie too, won't it?
Well, I think that's the...
It's a third paper in a way, isn't it?
Yes. I know, sorry, I'm jumping. I apologise.
Because the water reform is all about, well, actually,
what's going to happen.
Who does that.
Yeah.
And as part of that, every TA in New Zealand has signed up to a memorandum of understanding with the government, and as a consequence of that, has received some funding for some upgrade work. And improvements. So, there will be investment just at the moment, but the long-term management of these infrastructure assets is what the reform's all about.
Thank you for clearing that.
Cole, is it fair to say, with regards to a number of those drinking water standard where those communities have failed, some of those will be technical breaches simply because of the monitoring regime?
That's right. So that example is one of those technical breaches. So it may not be that supply had E. coli in it, but that they didn't test meant that they didn't know.
Yeah. Any further questions? Moved by Kate, seconded by, and this is to receive the report, seconded by Carmen.
Yeah, it's very good.
No further discussion. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you very much, but don't move.
But wait, there's more.
I'm going to get them. It's really good, actually. It's a very good report.
So 7.2, Three Waters delivery reforms. Mariana, you were part of, obviously, we have been part of the Mayoral Forum and providing advice, direction, papers, reports, etc. Do you want to come up to the table as well? Or?
No, there could be questions.
Yep.
Do you want things?
So this is sort of pretty much covering off what's been bubbling away via the Merrill Forum in Otago and Southland, and also there's a indicative timeline I see in the back of the report, and obviously the collaborative approach from each region, but collectively as well, and some work going on. So you're just going to cover off those pretty much.
Yes, and the purpose of this paper is to keep yourselves and Environment Southland informed, because each of the TAs has agreed to the Memorandum of Understanding with Government that related to the stimulus funding. So they're essentially up to date on the reform program and how Otago and Southland are responding and working together. So it just plugs that gap for yourselves and for Environment Southland. And we're all in a wait and see, well, not in a wait and see position, but in a information gathering phase at the moment. There's not a lot of strategic or contentious work happening right now. So it's a wait and see for that phase after the information gathering phase.
And for that stimulus funding, there was 100% sign up with the MOU in Otago and right throughout the country.
Everybody signed up to it, yes.
Signed up. Excellent. Hey, so I'll just go to Kate in a minute. So essentially we received this report, recommendation 1, and also notes the Otago and Southland local authorities continue to work together to support both regions' interests in the Three Waters reform program. Kate.
My question may relate to the next paper, but I want to ask it now just in case we need to do it. Yeah, so I'm sorry if I've got it in the wrong place. I get it all, and again, congratulations on the reports, because it's really hard stuff to get your head around and what I thought it was, but there was clarity there. What I don't understand at the end of this is the timing or the priorities given. I hope that we may have learnt from other things that we're not going to fix every bit of water immediately, but I don't have and I know this is high level, but I don't have a grasp of, as we work through this, what is going to be fixed first. And do we have that understanding yet?
Can I have a go at throwing that back? What do you mean by can you give me an example by what you mean by being fixed for, like which bits are going to be fixed first?
If, say we've got growth demands in Queenstown that need to have infrastructure in order to grow, and we've got a community in Benha that needs an upgrade of the system, and we've got some other systems. Yeah, I'm just not quite sure how in the mix of this, you're not going to have every water engineer in the country being able to just do our problems, let alone the existing ones in Otago, and I just don't. Yeah.
So I think the simplest and quickest answer is a lot of stuff is happening in parallel, and part of the incentive to sign up was some of that funding to address some immediate infrastructure issues. But there is a whole, I guess that's part of why we were keen to bring a package of papers to you. There's sort of streams of work going on. So there is people working on immediate infrastructural type changes. There's Mariana talked an information gathering exercise to inform, like I said, a broader strategic look across the country. There are discussions around what entities might look like, and what the governance and structure and finance things that they might look like. I think it's pretty clear from the central government that the solution they're looking for is not each individual TA resolves these issues just as TA. So I think a lot of things are happening in parallel, but in terms of specific infrastructure upgrades and those the like, my understanding is that TAs would be doing this as part of their planning processes. They would be prioritising immediate upgrades within their own TA.
It reminds me, and someone else much cleverer than myself made this comparison years ago when this first started, this discussion about the Regional Land Transport Committee that prioritises regionally wide roading infrastructure. And I'm just wondering in the submission, maybe it is about the next one, is having that across the Otago Southland understanding of priorities so that we're not competing for resources. And I know that's getting down to the detail, but it's actually something that we need to have an eye on
So I think we are working together. There is, I think it's referred to as the work in the working group and the other water secretariat. So Otago and Southland are that all the TAs and the 2 regional councils are all part of a collective that are working together. That doesn't necessarily mean they have combined all their money.
No, it's not. It's not about combining the money. No. Yeah. It's about making sure that we're not trying to. Yeah.
So, maybe if I can help a little bit, as you have probably also read, I sit on the steering committee. So obviously there are things that I can say and there are things that I can't. But at the moment, the way that I kind of look at it is that the reform hasn't really got into the detail of prioritisation or even individual issues inside of regions. Some of that may come through the request for information process, and that information is due at the end of January to inform cabinet papers later in the year. But really the reform is at a higher level than that at the moment. So it's looking at issues around and it's all voluntary at the moment, so it's really important that everyone understands it's voluntary. So there's no mandatory requirement for councils yet to make a decision about whether they're opting in or whether they're opting out of whatever might come. But it's really looking at the system. So you've got the water regulator, then there's something about how you pay for the services. There's something about who looks after the services. So, do the services stay inside of councils or do they go to other entities? There's consideration of, but really not hugely yet, some of the overlap with like the NPSFM and other types of intersect with legislation. There's also a piece around iwi and the role of iwi in consultation with iwi. So it's more looking at the framework for the system. No one's really got to the point yet where we're actually starting to do the divvying up of, if there were to be entities, how many would there be, where would they be, and what would they be responsible for? And also the other sort of parallel work stream is, well, if Three Waters is taken out of TAs and put into entities, for example, what's the future of local government? Like, what would local government look like and do?
I suppose. Thank you, and I think that gives me some clarity. I suppose the devil is in the detail, and why I'm going down into it to ensure that we actually get a better system that does deliver improvements as quickly as what we've got. Sorry if I am going into that detail. That is my reasoning. I thought
perfectly understandable, and that's the reason. That's some of the reason for the reform, but it just hasn't got to answering those questions yet. It's more at that framework level, looking at how would the system come together.
So one, and last question, I promise, is just understanding, is the role of a body, the role of using infrastructure as a limitation to growth, or has that been seen as, that's badly worded, where you've got growth but you haven't got a provision of water and or wastewater services, and we've seen that in a number of areas happening, is there suggestions that the Water Services Bill could be providing a time frame for that to ensure?
I don't really think it's not, to my mind, I don't think it's the Water Services Bill that's necessarily going to address that. I think we'll see that come through the wider reforms, but B, the way that spatial planning is looked at through the RMA reforms as well.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. Brian.
Yeah, thank you. Just following on from that conversation, like in the 90s in the UK, they established water companies, Anglican Water.
Anglium.
Anglium.
I went there.
Yeah. Anyway, all their chairs used to drive around in Rolls Royce. You know what I mean? Like it was funded by the EU. They put in new sewage treatment plants and water supply. It was all go. Is that the model that we're ultimately
Without the Rolls Royce
here, or is it the deleted? More Scottish model. Is there?
Yeah.
No, for real.
No, you're right.
No, you're right.
You're exactly right. So that's why I was smiling, because I think it's pretty widely known. I don't think I'm giving away any great secrets. That New Zealand has particularly looked at the Scottish model and the Tasmanian water model.
Yeah. So there's, so while we're incrementally moving forward, they're looking at the big picture and incrementally moving back, but they just haven't quite told us how to get there and how it's going to happen yet.
I think you could have a whole conversation with our General Manager, Alsom, sitting there, who would be able to inform you on that quite a lot.
Great.
Yes, given her past career.
Were you driving what type of car did you drive?
Mariana may be able to help here, but my understanding part of the Three Waters program going forward is looking at those two options and how practical or not they could well fit. There is some work being done looking at those and whether they are suitable for the New Zealand situation.
Yeah.
That will be the later phase after the information gathering phase, is to look at those options and specifically how they would pan out for Otago and Southland, because the government will look at it and identify necessity. They'll be looking at the national implications of the model they're proposing, and it's up to us. The purpose of this collaboration is to, as far as possible, make sure we really understand what those implications would be for Otago and Southland, so we can participate meaningfully in that discussion.
So we're in the information gathering stage of that. Ground truthing and all that.
Yeah. For the Mirror Forum work, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, good discussion. I think we're pretty done. No further questions? If not, would someone like to move 1 and 2? Move Gary, seconded Carmen. Thanks, Mariana. Any further discussion? If not, I'll put both those recommendations. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Moving on to 7.3, Water Services Bill submission. This is essentially to advise Council on the general intent and content of the Water Services Bill and to seek approval to prepare a written submission to the appropriate select committee once they're up and running. Any other comment, Cole or Gwyneth?
Probably just like to highlight the points that I did raise, and if anyone had any further comment or question, whether that covered it all. The list that I had prepared is on page 62, and it's essentially broadening the scope of taumata ROI to assist households largely, recognise that source water bodies are precious, not only for providing a source of high quality drinking water, but some of the incentives for drinking water suppliers to maintain a quantity of supply could itself impact on those qualities. And that there's probably going to need to be some thought and assistance about some of the, regulatory capture implications for many of the ways that a lot of our rural communities, for example, receive water. So, as a take out of irrigation races and that kind of thing. So, we would need to think about that. One of the other things is to enable our ability to access the data that drinking water suppliers should be undertaking to measure the takes, the quantity and flows that could supplement our existing monitoring network as well. So if there's any further additions to that or deletions, happy to do so. And my suggestion was that we delegate the final submission to the chair and or CEO.
CE. Yep. Thanks, Colin. Thank you for the reminder about the scope of the submission. Kate.
Thank you. I was really impressed with the amount of things you've covered off, and congratulate you on it. I'm taking back that comment I made about rentals earlier on, and whether that was an alternative, that provision of a self-serving system in rentals should be, you can add in relatively cheaply systems for rental properties. It doesn't have to be necessarily done the way you suggested, in that it could be a warrant fitness thing on rentals as an alternative way. It just occurred to me that would be another way of dealing with it, and doesn't overcomplicate this if they don't want to take on the self-serve systems. But otherwise, the only thing I wanted to make is, I think in order to give the understanding that you have obviously got the Otago issues, giving examples would really assist. And I otherwise really, really supportive. I just think there's some really good examples that would assist in making the decision if they were that were lacking in the otherwise.
Thank you, Brian.
I think it was via the RPS process. I'm not sure, but the concept that making water tanks in houses compulsory. That's water off the roof, like in an urban environment. And I just wonder whether that fits into your thinking in any of all this.
So one of the issues with that in the Otago context, especially in central Otago, is that there's not that much rain over the course of a year. So they're not so common as they are, say, in Auckland for either provision of water. So my old house was tank supplied, because there's just not enough rain over the year to supply it.
But the whole coastal area, for example, South Dunedin cities had water supply issues.
Yep.
And having compulsory water tanks would make that go away.
Arguably yes, but you also run into issues with water quality off that as well. Washing.
You could use it. You could use it to do your washing machine and all this type of stuff, and so then the water that you've got you use for drinking water.
So my understanding is at the moment it's not in the RPS as a proposal. If to talk to the RPS question, I would, if it's something you'd want to explore further, I guess we could. I would, with my Australian hat on, suggest you look where that's been done elsewhere in the world and the success rate and the uptake of it, because there's the practicalities of implementation. It means it doesn't always give you what you in terms of efficiency and reduction in bulk water use. So, but it's not proposed in the current RPS that we're putting forward.
My
experience of it was largely for stormwater mitigation purposes, but with the side benefit of stand by supply water for that kind of thing rather than a primary supply.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, Carmen.
Thank you, through the chair. I was just going to ask Cole and Gwyneth, in our recommendations of your submission, it's just we talk about domestic water and those systems. And I was just referring you back to more specifically in South Otago, and it was raised that day, Mrs. Gardner, when we were over at municipal chambers, and I had those councillors from Clifford District Council saying how concerned they were and I'm bringing this in because we're in the Otago region, of stock schemes being put in, and then suddenly now they're drinking schemes. Where does that fit in with what we want to do? Because it's going to come up time and time again.
So I think this is the issue that we had a conversation with Mia Cadogan last week about, which is, yes, there is a view that there is ownership of these stock water schemes by the landowners or the collective.
Yep, that's right.
They become drinking water schemes.
Yes.
Then there's potentially a lack of clarity at the moment about, well, we don't want to lose our asset if it was to be wrapped up. You know, if there was a connection with the TA and it was to be wrapped up in whatever assets were transferred, particularly into an entity. And I understand that that's driving some of the thinking and perspective in those environments around the voluntary nature of opting in or opting out.
That's right.
That's quite an influence.
Swaying it, wasn't it? Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. What I had captured with that, and I wasn't aware of the example, was that in those instances where they have kind of transitioned to providing drinking water as well, it may be that as a result of this legislation, they seek to pull out from that because the regulatory burden is pretty steep, and the liability for getting it wrong is severe. So one of the implications for, I guess, Otago more generally is if those schemes do that they say, look, you know, this is for stock water only, we don't permit you to use it for drinking water, it's not good enough, and we don't, you know, make any claims to allow that, where do those communities get drinking water from as an alternative? And that's something I raised in there, but perhaps the example you gave about, you know, whose asset is it?
Yes,
is something else.
And the meter's going to be ticking for that local authority. Yes. Thank you, I appreciate that.
Just many years ago now, the Rocklands Water Scheme did exactly that. It was under the Dunedin City Council's control, and because of the last drinking water standards change, which, let's say, 15 years ago, whenever, it decided to become a private scheme for exactly the reason you highlighted, Kyle. The cost to bring it up to meet the new standards was.
I guess there's no out anymore. If you're supplying more than one dwelling, you're a drinking water supplier.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Same as Hindon. Hindon was the same.
Pass. Code will probably know.
I remember going to Hindon to do the schemes. We do. They do top up, don't they? Yeah, from memory. Thank you.
Kevin.
I would say that the majority of those schemes have been developed by the land users, and that has sort of proliferated the ability to produce from that land and gain income for the areas and sustain communities. And if you look in the North Otago district, you'd see the Corridale water schemes, which are a combination of 6 schemes that I think it was 10 years ago left the Waitaki District Council because of lack of water quality and lack of water quantity and excessive costs, and rationalise their whole system, and that is all now in one scheme. If you took, they could revert that to a stock water, but then you wouldn't have a house on water.
Exactly.
Yeah, so that's the and just another supplementary to that. You made a statement. Water supplies being taken out of irrigation races. What's the difference between water supplies being taken out of irrigation races as to irrigation being taken out of water supplies? Does it not depend how you... Because it's... I can give a perfect example.
One's permitted and one's not.
Yeah, but it's the same body of water.
Such. So that's one of the things I wanted to point out, that there's a potential for some relatively perverse outcomes.
Yeah.
Instead of those people being part of a scheme and supplied by a company who goes, actually, we don't want any part of this, that they now put in their own take as a permitted activity. And so there's no actual change to the quality of the water that those people are receiving.
Yeah. That's how Oamaru supplied.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a water race. It's a drinking water race, not an irrigation race.
It's a challenge, and it's worth pointing out.
All set?
Yep. Thanks.
Carmen.
Have we moved
You're over it?
No, but you're happy to move the two recommendations?
I'm very happy to move it. And saying that, I would like to say what 3 very good reports these are. They were detailed, and I would just echo what great work you've put into it. Thank you very much.
Seconded by Kevin. And just before I put those two motions, just to confirm, Gary and Hillary sat out of this discussion 7.3, and Hillary, I know Gary sat out of 7.1, but did you want that noted in the minutes that you also sat out of 7.1, Hillary? Yep. Okay. I'll put those two motions that we received through. Oh, sorry, Kate.
Sorry,
do you want to speak to the motions?
Yeah. I just want to. I hope that in drafting it or further. Again, a point I made in the question, but I'll do it again, that we will add examples, because I think the ones that have come around the table will better inform why they're included in the submission, and will give people something to refer back to. The next question I've got is, if we put the submission, are you planning, and whoever signs it off, I hope that you, Andrew, would be prepared to speak to it at Select Committee, because I think this is one that the people of Otago need to be heard on, and whether that could be a third part of that motion. Again, and whether you're prepared to be informed by the examples that councillors may give you to better. The Rocklands example, the North Otago examples, and there are smaller ones, but how that bears out, I think, is important that it does get heard at a Select Committee. And does that need to be a motion, or are you happy?
I think it's probably better as a 3.
As a 3.
If there is an opportunity.
If the mover's happy with that.
Are you happy with that? So if there's an opportunity for myself to speak
at the Select Committee
to our submission, that I take that opportunity up.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Could I just ask one definition question? So when a supply, let's say the Lower Waitaki, supplies you water to your tank, so you get a point of water supplied to your tank, where is the supplier responsible to? Is he going to be responsible to your tank or to your house? Because it's two quite...
Yeah. Good question. I guess it depends whether the company supplying the water generally permits that to be taken as drinking water as well.
Well, it's the district council. So,
right.
Yeah.
District. So if part of the reason that they are supplying more than one person is for drinking water purposes, then they are a drinking water supplier.
Yeah.
So at the point, I guess, that they provide it to the person, it would be at the tank, I presume.
We might have to take on notice where the actual boundary is.
Good question, but
there's no monitor from the K out the road into my quite clean new tank.
I think as a matter of practice, at the moment anyway, most TAs are responsible to the boundary. I imagine that's going to continue, but it's worth pointing out as something that might need to be thought about going forward.
Yeah. All set?
Yeah.
So I'll put those three recommendations. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you very much. Well done.
Thank you.
Moving on to 7.4, the Eco Fund applications October 2020 funding round. The report seeks Council's approval to fund the recommended Eco Fund applications for the latest round. Obviously, Councillor Deaker is not with us today, but Councillor Kelleher and Robertson both sat on the Eco Fund approval process.
We did.
Welcome to Ewan Hind and Gavin. Thank you both. Ewan, we're essentially, I believe, in your hands.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. I trust I can take the paper as read.
Yes.
And in doing so, I need to start by pointing out a typo in paragraph 12. paragraph 12 should read, the decision panel disqualified 7 of the 30 applications, not 4.
Thank you.
Perhaps we can come back to that in questions if people have it. But just to provide a bit of background and introduction to the paper, I'm sure everybody is aware that the Eco Fund is Council's vehicle to support community-driven projects that protect, enhance and promote environmental outcomes across Otago. There's $250,000 available each year, split into 2 funding rounds. The Council's previously run 5 rounds of the fund. This, though, is the first round that the Operations Directorate have had carriage of administration for the fund. So just wanted to start by acknowledging the good work of the comms and engagement team who have been administering the fund to date, and in particular to Shade Bain for her excellent work in providing handover support to our team. And I'd also like to acknowledge the input from my fellow staff members who are involved in the assessment process, and also Councillors Deaker, Robertson and Kelleher for their input and diligence on the decision panel. As you can see from the paper, we were significantly oversubscribed. Each funding round of the Eco Fund has been oversubscribed. This one was the most oversubscribed by some margin to date. And from a personal perspective, it was really pleasing to see such a strong set of applications coming in from the community. I think it's good to see that there are so many groups doing so many good works that align with our program out there in the community. And so I'd just like to finish by acknowledging the work of all the applicants who have put the time and effort in to apply for this. And to any of those applications that ultimately don't get funded, just want to underscore that that's not a reflection on the value of each particular project. It's simply a reflection on the fact that it's a competitive process with a capped amount of funding available. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks for that, Ewan. The Eco Fund's sort of become a bit of a flagship for this organisation, along with Enviro Schools and other type of activities that the organisation is involved with at grassroots. These are projects that we can sort of see happening relatively quickly. So a lot of the other focus that this organisation has is more longer term type outcomes. But thank you. I'll go to Gretchen and then Gary, just to cover off if there's anything from the decision panel process that you wanted to mention. Gretchen.
Yeah, thank you, and it was an honour to be involved. It was my first time on the panel. Yeah, what a round it was, a huge amount of quality applications. You couldn't say really that any of them weren't high quality, but it made the process really challenging. We were very lucky to have the support of staff throughout the organisation assessing at a technical level as well, and offering advice and recommendations to the panel. We have a rigorous scoring system as well for assessing these based on the criteria that we put out for the fund. So yeah, they were put through that, and we did that as well rigorously as a panel, and came out with these ones assessed as highest, whether they be applications under the 5,000 and then the applications over. Based on how much money we had, really, we could give out to the projects that were the highest scoring, and we did that. Yeah, and also I guess the other point to note is whether or not actually some of the criteria and the process could be improved, and we think that there is room for that. So, no doubt the council will hear a wee bit more think piece on how we could improve into the future, but I hope that the applicants that receive this money are as excited as we are to see the results that they achieve,
it's particularly those little ones actually, I think, make a massive, massive amount of difference for the small amount that we invest. And some really interesting big ones there, so I encourage you to have a read through of what is involved. Thank you.
Thanks, Gretchen, and thank you for your contribution through the process, Gary.
Look, same position from me. I think a real commendation to the staff, the robust effort that was put in by the staff that to bring to the panel, a very detailed analysis of the applications. And I know they spent a lot of time on it. So it is a very robust process. And again, the people who have gone to the effort to make applications to the fund, and we certainly encourage it, to see it oversubscribed the way it is. I think one thing for me is around, I think as a council, we do need to have a discussion around, in this one situation where we had actually quite a small sum of money and small number of applications below $5,000, then to the panel, we were sort of picturing the people who were making these applications that are, individuals at night trying to fit it in around everything else. If there could be a way that we didn't have them being assessed in line with the big applications, then I think it would have been nice to see more of those funded. But either way, it's so great to see it oversubscribed the way it was, and hopefully that reflects into the future, and maybe in the future we can look to have more money allocated for this.
Thanks, Gary, and thanks for your contribution as well. Ewan, do you want to just pick up on any of those comments from Gretchen and Gary?
Not unless there are specific questions from others on those, but I'm happy to answer questions on those or any others that people may have.
Yeah, just on the scope of the or the criteria, I should say. Is there a challenge around some of the applicants where they're looking at certain enhancement or certain work or whatever on private land, that it may be a joint community type project where you've got a landowner, and I suppose take the Pomahaka wetlands project is probably a example is where I'm coming from. Is that a bit of an issue in terms of criteria at the moment? A project like that just wouldn't get through the hoops.
I'm not sure it's necessarily a problem of criteria, more so than a problem of our application forms and processes perhaps being as clear as they could. So just going back to paragraph 12 and the 7 that were disqualified, 4 of those were because they didn't meet the terms and conditions of the Eco Fund, which is attachment 1, and specifically the focus of those applications was around private or commercial gain, which is spelt out in the T's and C's, but it's sort of buried down towards the back. And some of those, it's really a matter of reframing the purpose and the scope of the projects to make it clear that they are seeking biosecurity or biodiversity gains on public space rather than just within the private realm. And again, that's some of the simple process improvement work that I note in paragraph 14 that I think we can get in place by the time the next funding round in March comes. So I think it's just about ensuring that the forms are as helpful for applicants in making sure that they're aware of how they need to pitch their projects.
Thank you. Hilary, then Gretchen.
Yeah. Would this fund be able to be changed to allow for people to apply for the cost of resource consents for things? We've been approached by various people to say, it's one thing you're not giving us any money, it's another thing you're taking money away from us while we're trying to do good stuff or whatever. Is it, if we were mindful to make a fund available to provide for reimbursement of resource consents or whatever you call it, would this fund work to do that, or would you do something a little bit different to?
So under its current terms and conditions, no. That would be seen as commercial gain, and so it wouldn't meet the terms and conditions of the fund as it currently stands.
Yeah, so sorry, I realised that they wouldn't comply with it currently. I was saying, would if we wanted to do that we'd be better to do a sort of an offshoot of this one or do something completely different just as a...
So I might just get Sarah to follow up.
Yeah.
Gavin,
Well,
sorry.
Through you, Chair, I mean, you set the criteria and you can set any criteria that you wish. And if you wanted to introduce that sort of thing, I'm sure it would need to be very carefully thought through how it would work. So the answer is yes. If you're setting the criteria, there's no statutory process here. You can basically do what you want. You can change it at any time, but something like that would need to be very carefully thought through.
Can we ask if there can be any work done by somebody somewhere on as to how we might achieve?
Yeah, I'm just wondering.
I wonder if we could hold that thought, because we're going to have a workshop tomorrow, and I think with the information that we're going to give you tomorrow, you might just want to think about options. Yeah.
So, I realise there's fish hooks and things. But I shall hold it till tomorrow. I can probably just about manage that long.
Okay.
Excellent. Gretchen.
Yeah, I was just going to say that we did discuss those types of things, and that as well as the Eco Fund, there are other issues that could be handled through other council processes and decision making. Not putting any prejudgment on that particular one, but yeah, it would be quite hard to support a process like that when the fund is aiming to get a specific environmental gain, and you just can't guarantee that going through a consent process you're going to get anything at the end of it, including the consent. So it would be quite challenging to do that one, but it doesn't mean that there aren't other avenues that we could think about as a council. And the other thing was what was said about the whether these projects are on private land or on public land, and that is an area where it could be either, and there may be really valid reasons why it was on private land if there was public benefit, but we don't have particularly strong criteria around what makes most sense there. And in the light of a lot of landowners needing to do specific things like fencing and looking, when is it fair and when is it not fair, and those sorts of things are things that we talked about briefly and we need to talk about a lot more as a council. Yeah.
Thank you.
So just on that discussion, can I make 2 quick points? One is that we should remember that the focus of the fund is for community-driven projects. And so if we did want to change the direction of it, we would have to have a discussion around whether or not things like consents meet that criteria, or whether you want to change the fund as an animal completely. The second point is that figure 1, which is on, I don't have page numbers, apology, but in figure 1, step 9 of the process indicates that we are committed to an annual review process.
72.
Thank you. So perhaps that would be a good time to go back and have that more strategic discussion around purpose of the fund. Thank you. Gary.
I think just to follow those comments and Gretchen's as well, that a couple of things that we have detected, I think we do as a council need a workshop and have a discussion around this with these examples that are appearing, and the Tomahaka one is one, where it may be on private land, but there is so much community
public
interest
good.
and public good that is the private element is that it's held privately, but it is available to the community. So if there was that set of criteria that was being met, then the private public element is actually just facilitating that for the time being, and it may transition to something different in the future. So it's just highlighting some issues that I think we need a discussion about.
Yep, so we'll tease it out tomorrow, I've seen a bit.
Maybe not fully, but
general principle. Yep. Any other queries?
Yes.
Carmen.
Wanted to say thank you to Councillor Robinson, Kelleher and Deaker for undertaking this. I just wanted to ask you, was there something that was it hard? Were you torn by some organisation that really kind of deserved it but just didn't quite meet criteria, and I'm not asking name names, but every time we do it, sometimes we see something different that we haven't seen before. And I just wondered from you two, was there anything that stood out this time? Is it the diversity for you, if you like? What people have thought about, gone outside the normal realms?
Tearful hankies.
Quite, yeah.
Absolutely. I reckon it's the diversity and the innovation that people have got in Otago. The projects are just immensely diverse and you never know what you're going to expect. This time the highest scoring one was one that aims to transplant salt vegetation in inland Otago, which, that scores the highest. And then you've got a dome at Otago Boys to then grow plants that are given out free in the community. It's one of the really small projects, but could make a big difference. They're just, vastly diverse.
So let's let your mind wander. Thank you.
Thanks for that. Gretchen, you happy to move the 2 recommendations?
You should second it.
Gretchen?
Oh, sorry, yes.
Are you happy to move the 2 recommendations?
Yes, move that.
Gary, you happy to second? Yep. Any further discussion? If not, thank you very much, everyone, for the team effort. I'll put both recommendations. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Excellent. Thanks, Jon. Moving on to 7.5, the ORC greenhouse gas emissions infantry. This report delivers an assessment of ORC's organisational greenhouse gas emissions for 2018-2019. This was an action from the last annual plan. Total gross carbon dioxide equivalents 578 tonnes. Transport being the major contributor at 60% of emissions, and essentially the suggestion is the short-term solution is the purchase of carbon offsets. We've got 2 recommendations there, pretty clear. Nick, is there any comments you'd like to make at the front end? And then I'll go to Kate in a second.
No, I'd take it as read. I would have thought it's fairly self-explanatory. What it does show is, as an this is just our internal organisation emissions, so they are relatively low, and obviously there's a raft of recommendations that come out of the report and the action plan which we propose to work through, and the recommendation is that we'll do that and look at what we can do around how we would instigate purchasing offsets to potentially just move council to carbon zero, which would factor into the long-term plan.
Thank you. Kate.
Thank you for the report. Great stuff. And I'm delighted and very happy if we had to change the motion that we aim to be carbon zero. I think that would be an upfront comment that I'd love to see added. And would you have any problems with that?
What do you mean?
That the first motion might be that we aim to be carbon zero. Would that be a helpful first recommendation?
I think from the recommendations, that's what we're aiming to do. So
I think it's just okay. I'm interested with the agreed purchase of carbon offsets as the solution, and I would have thought that there is sufficient land and interest in Otago where people want plantings done, that we could be offsetting in a different way that works with landowners for doing riparian planting or the public realm community that needs planting out, that would give us a strategic benefit to the council. Was that considered by ELT as an offset?
When we discussed it at ELT, one of the things that we don't understand is what we might be able to do internally. The report notes that we don't have any activities that generate offsets themselves, like we don't have any forestry interests or anything. What you're talking about there, I mean, we don't have to purchase carbon offsets, but the thing is, if we're doing stuff, what you're talking about there, any emissions offsets that you're talking about there would be on somebody else's land, so they wouldn't factor into our own carbon emissions when we recalculate the data.
Well, it could be our land.
Necessarily, it could be the Queen's chain.
Yeah.
We'll just one at a time, please.
But as I said, we haven't looked at how that would work. Yeah, and so I couldn't really comment on whether that would apply if we went and did something. I don't know what the actual rules are around what you can count and what you can't count, because it could be that we go and do a whole lot of stuff, but it doesn't actually count towards any sort of carbon offset. I don't know.
Would you mind if in the motion and the recommendation that it was expanded to consider other options where we may invest in Otago initiatives that may be able to put us in a position of net carbon zero, but without having to buy them somewhere else potentially?
I don't think it's good enough to do that. So a couple of things here. One is, I think you've used a couple of terms, net carbon zero and then zero carbon, and I think we've got to be just careful about which term and how we're using it. But the other thing is, what we're really saying here is, we don't have a plan yet about how we might offset in other ways. But what we could do is purchase carbon offsets and do that decreasingly over time as we find other ways of reducing our carbon emissions. So I don't think anything that you were talking about, Councillor, is off the table. I just think we're kind of not there yet. We've got the calculations. We've said, we think we should probably work towards, full offsetting by the purchase of carbon emissions for the moment while we work out a plan. And some of the reason for that is because of what Nick has said, which is, we're in a building at the moment in Dunedin that has issues in terms of electricity supply. It's not necessarily a long-term proposition for us to be there, so we may not choose to make investment in changes to that building at the moment that would reduce our carbon offsets, which means the thing to do is to, in the interim, to purchase carbon offsets rather than
I think we're talking across each other, and I'm sorry I didn't explain myself well. I'm saying that if carbon offsetting is the only solution, is there any reason why we can't look at us offsetting either planting out some land that we own already or the Queen's Chain if it is allowable? But doing it in Otago is my issue.
So one of the things that we've talked about is about planting using our land at Lake Tuakatoto. But in order for us to progress that conversation, I think we have to have the conversation we're going to have at the workshop tomorrow, because I think until you have the picture, talking about just adding extra stuff in is making me kind of a little bit cautious.
And that is an excellent segue into my last question, which I don't want to get into the detail. I'm really thrilled that we've got this report and that we've got some action plans. But would it be okay that the second recommendation has the word "and" between council and staff, and that allows us to be part of that conversation, and that would make it all possible to happen in the next wee while? Because I think it's us that do the long-term plan, and that would mean that we can have those discussions at a different place without making any decisions other than the meetings.
Yep.
Thank you.
Sure.
Can I suggest that the wording is turned around so it's staff and council, so that staff initially look at
that's fine.
The options and then we work collaboratively with council?
Very happy, and I'm happy on those bases to move it whenever the time is right for you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I'll just cover off the... sorry, Liz.
Were we going to add the recommendation number 3 that you mentioned, Kate?
Thank you very much.
So that's the ORC aim to be carbon neutral? Is that the correct terminology?
I think, sorry, I don't know which one is the correct one to use. I think there is some debate about that.
I think you said it was like, it's probably net carbon zero,
I think it probably is.
because you're not carbon zero,
Yes.
but you're doing other things to offset it.
That.
Yeah.
So ORC to aim to be net carbon zero. Is that what we're saying?
That's what
Just
the report, sorry, I was using the language that was used in the response.
Can we just say carbon neutrality? Aim for carbon neutrality.
That's fine.
So continue polluting, is that what we're saying?
Hang on, please. Look,
Same thing.
I believe the recommendations actually achieve what we're saying, and it's just a matter of putting it in language that, we're all comfortable with. And carbon neutrality, we're comfortable with that?
Yes.
Sarah?
I'd prefer we use net carbon zero, which is in the report.
Okay, cool. So the first recommendation, ORC aim to be net carbon neutral, correct?
Zero.
Oh, sorry,
Zero.
sorry, beg your pardon. Okay, and the other two recommendations are the same. Obviously, it'd be 2 and 3. Now I'm going to Hilary, and then Brian, and then Kevin.
My question is around transport and fuels, and it shouldn't really be costing us anything. I'm thinking that we're not being quite ambitious enough. Perhaps where appropriate, encourage staff to use alternative, whatever it is. And I'm wondering whether we should, for a start off, include councillors in there and like sharing is what I started off thinking in my head. Sharing transport and things and have both staff and council actually actively thinking about whether we're doing the best for the planet as we move around, and particularly in the transport area. So what started me thinking about that was going off to Cromwell and how many of us need to go, how many cars, including not just
we
us,
would coordinate that,
but staff, and so as that we're all in this
together. Walker.
Well, I was going to say fuel-driven, whatever it is, together. So I would like us all to be in that Walker, as one thing.
E-Walker.
And
is it just, sorry?
Yeah.
Do you want to just talk about fuels, or what about travel and using alternatives?
Yes, generally that whole thing about using alternatives and whatever it is, so as that we are all doing that, and that we end up with something that actually is sort of by way of being a checklist or something, such as that people could respond to that. Have you checked that there's nobody else going in your direction, or what? Some so as that we could actually consciously report back or think about or whatever. Have we done the best we could collectively as team council?
Yes. I sense that. Yeah,
Sarah's saying no.
No.
Sorry.
No. It's just, I would just make the point that you made a decision today to send out over 100,000 copies of a consultation document. And in the next breath, we're doing carbon zero, and we're worried about, us guys getting together and making sure that we're doing it. So I'm just trying to understand, which one are we doing?
This is a completely separate thing to me. It's just it's not in the long-term plan, and that it hasn't got a financial implication. It can only get cheaper than what we're doing, probably. If we think about sharing transport and things, it won't cost more money to anybody, hopefully. So I'm just thinking consciously something in there that says both the team, being all of us, and sort of consciously doing those things is one thing I'd like to see whether we could, and not in any sort of terribly formal way, and at all, just sort of it would be good if we could think about whether we had been doing those things, and we'd be a wee nudge to think about that would be good too. And the other thing I was thinking about in that vein was when we're thinking about where we've got resources in Central Otago or offices or whatever, if that is also in the mix as to where would best be to have somewhere because of the length of travel people had between Arthur and Martha. I'm sure you're thinking about that anyway.
Yes,
Sarah. So just slightly more formally,
that's right. Well,
say
yeah, I think
that is a thing that's in the mix about what sort of.
Sure. So I think overall, our staff have probably reduced the carbon footprint, not necessarily the 578 tonnes, but if you think about staff travelling to and from work and some of that type of carbon emission, with our new flexible working policy, with the thinking we're doing about where we locate our staff, those sorts of things, certainly I'm sure there's a positive impact, that's for sure. But I suppose I am looking for direction, because obviously we've talked about energy and we've talked about vehicles and flights, but of course there are other things that have a carbon impact that aren't in the report and that we haven't talked about, and we seem to be sort of doing two different things. So
I'm just sort of wanting to slightly expand what it's describing in the transport thing to be clear that we should be
yes.
all in here, and this isn't something that should be applied to the staff so much as taken cognizance of by all of us as an entire team.
Sure.
Okay, so I'm going to go to Brian, Kevin, Carmen, and can I just make a comment first? I sense that this is their first crack on dipping the toe in for the first time to get a handle on what our carbon footprint is, and I sense that we're going to delve into discussion around probably more detail about what an action plan may look like, and I think that's going to be the next cut. But yeah, just want to premise.
That's because it was in here as an action.
Yep.
Section 3 action plan.
Yes. Right.
Say no more.
Yep.
Okay. Brian.
Look, just in reply to Sarah, wanting some consistency. Like, it's a complicated thing. Like, an hour ago, I actually voted for the document. And the reason I did that was because I felt it was of sufficient significance based on the tentative rate increases that we've had to sit something on people's kitchen table. And I'm sure the same, to be fair, the same discussion is probably had, like we've had 1,200 domestic flights, we've had 7 international flights, and I'm sure the same decision process will go on with those. So there will be anomalies, and it's where to from here. What the report says to me, is I think there were 3 key areas. I think electricity and transport was the key one. It's 60% of our emissions. So we've quickly, I don't know how we quite sort of did it, but we sort of quickly jumped in to say we were going to be net carbon zero.
Yeah, that's just madness.
We just sort of plucked it out of there and put it there. Maybe that's best practice. I don't know what good practice is. We didn't even discuss it. We just got this thing, put it in there. But we need to agree a target, and then we need to agree a plan. From my perspective, just purchasing offsets actually is a little bit lazy. That's my personal view, even though I voted for the 50 extra grand. Like the Tuatotoko, for example, planting, we should be doing that anyway. That's our moral responsibility on this planet. And at the same time, we should also be looking at our car fleet, which we've been talking off and on for quite a period of time. And the last tick box here is, yes, the recommendation from the report is that we need to transition the vehicle fleet to small engine vehicles, electric/hybrids. And, you know, we've resisted this, but here it is. There's the recommendation. So in our plan, I'd love to see just where to from that. So we're marrying some practicality with some, you know, aspiration with carbon. So I'm looking forward, unless we've already done it, you know, to think about the target that we actually need to do. I'm a bit cynical about this idea of offsets, and I look forward to a plan.
Absolutely. Sarah.
So, don't disagree with you about offsets, but suspected that you would want to do something immediately. And that is the easiest thing for us to do right now if you want to go to net carbon zero. If you don't want to go to net carbon zero, we don't have to buy offsets and we can just chip away at it. What we were suggesting is we go to net carbon zero by purchasing offsets and then chip away at the amount of offset we purchase by transitioning to other things like plantings, etc.
Yeah. Or should the recommendation simply be to come back with some options?
We can absolutely do that.
I think a resolution.
I think it's that's what we had intended to do with the LTP.
Yeah.
But it would be good to have a steer from you about, you know, do you want to be net carbon zero immediately? Do you want to be?
Is that best practice?
Look, I think it's debatable. I don't think there's a whole lot of consistency everywhere.
So I would have thought we've done.
We did think the driver for us was when you look at it, it's reasonably inexpensive for us to achieve that. So, you know, if you wanted to do that, you could purchase offsets and it's reasonably inexpensive to do that.
Okay, so you're going to work through so we can consider the process and cost of purchasing, but options.
Brian, they haven't been moved yet. That was my first comment. I'm going to go to Kevin, then Alexa, then Michael, and then Carmen. Sorry, and then we're going to have a break, whether we've dealt with this one or not. We'll have a 10-minute break, and then we will reconvene. I'll let you know the time once we get a little bit closer. So, Kevin.
So thanks very much for the report, and it's good to see that we've got a baseline. Our CE at several meetings has told us that they are very keen to transform to low carbon vehicles, but at this stage, Mr. Rolls-Royce, Mr. Ford, or Mr. Kia, or anyone hasn't come up with a correct type of all-terrain vehicle that suits the work that we do. And so until that actually happens, I can't see the point of trying to change a fleet when it may, in fact, be giving us cars that are unsafe and practical for our staff. We actually need, look, buying carbon credits simply is another cost to our ratepayers, and a completely unacceptable cost to our ratepayers. In line 6, or in paragraph 6, they said that the RRC will continue to reduce emissions wherever possible. I think that's all we can actually do until government tells Ford or tells Kia or tells Toyota to cut their profit margins and give us low carbon cars, electric cars or hydrogen cars, whatever they are. I mean, we can't do any more than do our very best to cut the emissions that we're producing. Why would we go and make money for someone out of buying carbon credits? Carbon credits, the scheme, I'm not even going to go into it because it's just another Ponzi scheme. It's just carbon credits simply reduces the incentive to stop pollution. It's as simple as that. And it's proven. So I'm completely against the motion. I think we're right on track, but all we simply should be doing as an organisation to the benefit of our ratepayers is wherever possible reducing our emissions. Simple as that. And until technology and everything else catches up with it, with us, well, what else can we simply do? Port Otago's doing exactly the same thing. They're trying their very best to go into electric gear wherever they can. The technology's not there yet. So why would we go and buy at the expense, at the cost of our ratepayers, buy carbon credits that simply do nothing to change how much carbon we're putting out there? So that's just my humble opinion.
Shadowing a subsequent motion.
Well, I'm going to vote against that motion anyway, and I would be just simply voting that we do our very best to, which is paragraph 6.
Okay, I sense that when we have the break, we won't be quite complete, and I'm going to ask the most motivated councillors around the table that's got the strongest views to get into the same room and come up with a way forward. Okay, so Michael, please.
Oh, listen, I have some care and concern and share that of Kevin. There's an element of the hair shirt that is starting to overtake this discussion. We don't need to blind ourselves in some paroxysm of self-denial for something that is still nascent at a national level. And here's the good old Otago Regional Council trying to get in front of national policy on this, which is just absurd. I won't be voting for either options 1 or 3 or notes 1 or 3 on this. I have to say, the cynical in me, which is very cynical on this issue, suggests that for $14,500 we could probably go and do something really good environmentally. We seem to forget that we are a large, geographically difficult and diverse region of small population, and with very, very limited public transport options, and we'll be driving fossil fuel cars and trucks for a long time yet.
Thank you. Alexa?
I don't entirely agree with you, Michael, but I do entirely agree with you, Kevin. And I don't believe, and I'm very unhappy with 3, the resolution 3. I just don't think that's quite right for purchasing offsets. I don't believe that net carbon zero is a worthwhile thing to do unless it's a useful thing to do in terms of us providing more funding for really good regeneration projects. That's the only way it would be useful, I think. And so if we're doing some more planting or whatever, I could never prioritise buying offsets who knows where. I totally agree with you with you on that one, Kevin. It's a complete Ponzi scheme, and who knows what you're buying. Even if you do some good investigation, it's really hard to tell. But there are massive demands on our LTP at the moment, and I think our money will be better placed. I think the only reason for us to really try and become carbon zero in the current environment is if we have to lead that way to get others to. For example, if we have to do it to get our buses to do something different. So apart from that, I don't think we should. We have to, over time, change behaviour. And I think once we do start changing behaviour, it'll happen very quickly. And I totally don't think it's worthwhile just trying to look for vehicles that aren't there. I do agree with you that on that one, Michael, that we have a very, very large electorate that we need to get people around. And so I just think we need to ease up a little bit on that and realise what we're facing in our LTP that we'll learn about tomorrow, and be careful about if we spend. And I'm not happy to be spending money on offsets.
Okay, Carmen.
Oh, thank you through the chair. My question more to Mrs. Gardner. We've got number 19 on page, where are we? 218 of 279. Just talks about the electricity costs for head office. It's very difficult to reduce in the short term. COVID's come along, and then we've gone back to work and we've done Zoom and different things like that. Has that changed the electricity costs as well? I mean, I know it's a short term.
Not substantially.
You can't really say it enough to...
No, not substantially. There'll be a whole lot of reasons why that is. Yes. Even if you've only got 2 people in the office, you've still got to have the same amount of lights on. Those sorts of things. So, yeah, we haven't been able to reduce anything that's of any note.
Thank you.
Okay, what I'm going to suggest is that we stand adjourn and reconvene at 25 to 4. And if I could ask Kate and Kevin and Brian just have a think about what's up there on the board and hopefully find a way forward, would be much appreciated. And we stand adjourned, reconvene 25 to 4. Thank you.
Happy to second.
Thank you.
Kevin.
I'll be touching on.
I Right.
Sue Tim's
Welcome back, everyone, to this council meeting. We're just working our way through item 7.5, the greenhouse gas emissions infantry. I believe we have a new set of recommendations, or modified set of recommendations. Is there somebody that would like, no doubt Liz has got a copy and she'll put it up just in a moment. That's perfect. Thank you for your efforts.
Does that reach out?
Yes.
Kate, is that the way we want it?
Right here.
Yeah, we've received the report, then noted. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Seconded by Kevin. Everyone can see what they're voting on, 1, 2 and 3, up there on the screen. Receive the report and then take original council greenhouse gas emissions 18-19 tax year report. Notes that the ORC will work towards being net carbon zero. Notes the recommended action plan included in the report and that staff and council will work through those actions and consider the process and cost for inclusion in the LTP 20.
It should be 2021 to 31.
Good spotting.
What's that?
Last,
Bottom line, sorry, I just thought I'd set your text on that.
2021. Perfect. Moved and seconded. There is no discussion, I don't believe. I'll put those 3 recommendations. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Okay, thank you very much, everyone. Moving on to item 7.6. This is the Queenstown Lakes District Council Proposed District Plan Appeals Update. Welcome to Anita. Welcome back, Gwyneth. Essentially, the staff recommendation is we receive the report, note the progress on resolving appeals with Queenstown Lakes District Plan. Anita, challenging time, obviously, and well, thank you for the report. Is there anything you want to tell us? It's all pretty much self-explanatory. It is what it is.
Yes, through you, Chair. I think it's easy to be taken as read. It's a pretty hefty workload with managing this and the 2 GP appeals. So Gwyneth and I share calendars and we pass each other on the road as we split weeks and juggle children and life. But we certainly get the benefit of being involved, and most times all parties are receptive to us being involved. So it's a good process and we're getting some good outcomes.
Well, thank you for your efforts, and hopefully, the outcomes that we are seeking will eventually evolve. They may be slightly modified or whatever, but hopefully we can get there. Any questions or comment? Hilary, thank you.
This is something that may come in the context of there are some silly questions, but question-wise, when these things have happened, if a territorial authority comes out with a district plan and then we come out with a new RPS, which we're about to, what relationship do they have with each other?
So through you, Chair, I was always told there's no such thing as a silly question, and that's not a silly question at all. So the district plans have to give effect to the RPS and be consistent with it. So what that will mean is when the RPS is notified, the TAs will do an assessment of their district plan against the new RPS, and it may require them to make some changes. It will require them to make some changes in areas where we hadn't addressed particular matters in the existing RPS that we now are, and there'll be some other issues where it doesn't require any substantive changes.
But they'll need to align them again after they've just done their new ones anyway.
Yes, thanks.
Kevin.
Yeah, just so that would be so our RPS, once it becomes effective, they would then have to make effect to their, so they'd do that immediately. They wouldn't wait to the next 3-year term or whatever. They'd do that immediately. Or
there'll be, I would imagine they might do it in stages.
Right.
Some councils like Central Otago and Clutha will do it all at once as they do their reviews, because they're in quite a different space. Queenstown has been doing their review in stages anyway. DCC did theirs as a whole. DCC, I know, have a series of variations that they are doing. Some of them may be able to pick up some particular stuff, but I'm not exactly sure when they might do it all. It depends on how big it is. They need to change their plans to give effect to the planning standards regardless. The DCC has a longer time frame to do that. So it will be I imagine, without talking to them and not knowing, and they don't know how much they need to change, it might be an incremental process for some of those councils.
Thank you. No further discussion. I should have acknowledged your contribution as well, Gwyneth. You're obviously playing a tag team, and we appreciate that. Thank you.
I'm just worried about the children being juggled. I wanted to send them upstairs.
No further discussion. Someone like to move recommendations 1 and 2?
Yeah, I'm happy to.
Kate, seconded. Carmen.
Thank you.
Put those 2 recommendations. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Thank you very much, both of you. Item 8, recommendations adopted at the committee meetings. Would someone like to move both the Strategy and Planning Committee recommendations and also the Finance Committee recommendation? Moved Hillary, seconded Gretchen. Any discussion on both those? If not, Brian, sorry.
Yeah, just the first paragraph, Andrew. If you could just, I don't really understand what's happening. Iwi have advised the development of a mana whakahono.
Oh, sorry, we're not quite there yet. Right, that's Chairperson's report, that's next.
Oh, sorry.
Yep, sorry. I'll put the recommendations for both the items under 8. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Item 9, Chairperson's report. Take it as read. Brian.
Kate's just tapped me on the shoulder and said I should know the answer. But could you help me through this, Mr. Chair?
Okay. Just let me find it. So this was a result of...
I don't know the question or the answer.
Edward outlined the process that they're about to... Akaha are going through with the Dunedin City Council with the mana whakahonu rohi process, and just it was a reminder from Edward that until that process is complete with the DCC, the same process that we've agreed to embark on through mana to mana won't occur until the DCC one is complete. So it was really just a timing issue.
Yeah, like the rohi, we've got rohis. So mana whakahono rohi. What is that?
Common area. So the rohi will apply to the Otago region, which is the area in common we have between us and Mana Whenua.
It's an Maori made provision over in 2017.
Okay, thank you.
Any other queries? Gary.
2 questions. I see yourself and Sarah met with Environment Southland.
Yes.
At that meeting, was the opportunity raised for the rescue helicopter contribution to be discussed?
No, it wasn't. No, but we will follow that up. We have got lines of communication. So that, thank you for the reminder. My apologies that didn't happen. Thank you.
Okay, cool, thank you.
There was another.
Yeah, second question was just the delegation or the gentleman here today mentioned in public forum about other councils, Environment Southland, I think, and if they mentioned ECAN or not, but certainly Environment Southland, that there was some pushback and within staff at Environment Southland. And I wonder, did that come up in that meeting? Is that, for what they're saying, is that your understanding of where Environment Southland sits?
The Minister has invited Environment Southland to provide him with some advice on the winter grazing regulations. As a part of that, we have been involved in the conversation. So we're across what's happening.
Right.
But the advice will be coming from Environment Southland.
Right. So where the gentlemen were asking about is the possibility
there
of coordination with pushback, then there is coordination already.
Yes, there is coordination. I think I talk about it in my report.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Thank you. Thank you. Any other queries? Carmen?
Through Chair, well, you are the Chair. Councillor Noon. Number 2, your meetings, number 4 it is, with Don Robinson, Chair of the Guardians of Lake Wanaka.
Mm-hmm.
You talked about the water quality at Lake Wanaka and greater monitoring capability. Do you think they are happy, satisfied, pleased that there is greater monitoring capability there now, or do you still get the feeling they're wanting more?
Yeah, I think the key message from Dr. Don Robertson was around, taking a thimbleful of water every so often out of a lake of that size gives you limited data. So his message was around, and it's in that submission that went to the Minister of Conservation from the Guardian's annual report. His point is that around the margins of the lake, where probably your greatest challenges are, where your activity on land is happening, whether it's urban or rural.
Yes.
He doesn't believe there's a great understanding of the water quality in that space. So he's promoting the idea of more water quality monitoring and greater science to sort of back up decisions going forward, whatever they might be, to improve water quality. So that was pretty much his message. Yeah.
Appreciate too. I was just going to ask you about your function. It was great to have you along with Councillor Wilson that day at Waihola for the Enviro Schools, Water of Life Hui. It was thoroughly enjoyable, and I'm sure, like Councillor Wilson and I, you took a lot away. It was a great wee morning.
Yeah, those sorts of interfaces with the community, I think, are absolutely
lovely,
vital, because we put a face along with elected member face along with staff.
Yes.
And able to liaise with whether it's school kids, teachers, parents, whatever. It's just another sector out there that's important to connect with.
8 schools from south of Target. It was buzzing, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yep.
Thank you.
Any other queries? Someone like to move that we receive the chairperson's report. Move Hillary, second Carmen. Any discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Moving on to Chief Executive's report, Sarah's report. Take it as read. Any queries, questions? Sarah, Hillary?
This, following up on what Gary was saying about whether we're getting together with Environmental Southland or whatever they're saying up to the ministry about some of these things. Is there any way we could have some summary of the things that our staff or that somebody thinks are issues that have gone back to the ministry, saying that there was 2 things that Richard Saunders have been saying when he's been out on road shows. One of the things that he's been saying to farmers is that we're seeking clarity on some things. We're not sure what they mean. And the second thing he's been saying is that they've been sending messages back up to Wellington about some things just don't seem to be very practicable or doable. I'm not sure he said it much more neatly than that. I would really like some sort of summary of what comes in both those baskets, because our staff must have a really good idea by now which are in those baskets. Is that possible?
Yes. I think so. We have staff involved in a working group. So I'm just trying to remember who's doing it now, but we've got staff involved in the farm plan conversation. Gwyneth was at RMG the other day, which is the Resource Managers Group conversation, which is also doing work on some of these issues around embedding the new regulations. And we're continuing to have conversations in various other areas. So, yes, probably after Christmas, if that would be all right, just
when you can.
Yeah,
not because
we're
going
to you, outside of the meeting.
Anything we suggest up north, I mean, some things will fly and some things they won't. I mean, we just
but it would be useful for us to just know what we're at least passing back up the line. That'll be lovely.
Thank you, Carmen, and then Brian.
Thank you. Mrs. Gardner, I just want to ask you, and I'm not being nosy, but Reserve Bank board meeting that you and the chair attended, are the Reserve Bank quite interested in Otago's sector, topography, how we're going?
So we attended separate functions.
Oh, my apologies, yes.
So I was invited to meet, I was one of 4 that was invited to meet with them. So it's myself, Dougal from the Chamber of Commerce and a couple of professors from the university. Specifically in discussions that I had with the Reserve Bank, because each of us had a time where we talked about things. They specifically wanted to understand our work on climate change and some of the challenges we have there. I talked about fresh water as well, and then the other thing they wanted to understand was Council's appetite for borrowing for infrastructure. Yeah, so they were the 3 key things that they wanted to hear about. Thank you.
Sorry, who was it? Brian. Sorry.
Yeah, Canterbury and Southland, it appears that there's a certain amount of collaboration at CE level and at a chair level, but not at a councillor level. And there's so much that we can learn from each other in terms of their experiences in Canterbury and I mean, for example, Southland, you know, they've been through a consenting process for a lot longer than what we have. And even though they've got challenges, so much we can learn from them. So, I mean, my suggestion would be that we actually have a meeting, if not with 2 of them, with 1 of them, and we could host something here and Southland come up and Canterbury come down and not to have a cup of tea, but as a bit of learning and feedback and you know, with some gritty topics.
Certainly both parties are really keen to take that approach where there are matters of common interest, whether it's lobbying central government or whatever else. So
we're a year through the term.
Yes.
You know, my expectation would be that we do have a meeting with these councillors. I mean, one time we had it. The Canterbury ones actually flew down. We actually met near the airport, and they went back relatively quickly. You know, like they're probably only down here for a morning between flights.
Yep. Hey, look, there's no reason.
Aiming for carbon zero.
Yeah, there's no reason why. It's a really good idea, and there's no reason why it can't happen. It's a matter of just working far enough ahead so we can make it happen that it suits everybody in terms of a commitment, whatever that might be. But
so there's a meeting I think that's been arranged for before Christmas between the chairs, deputy chairs, and chief executives. So we could float it on the agenda there.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Cool. So, Carmen. And then Kevin.
No, you go.
Can I just add to that? There is some good work being done, right? Because I know Chair Noon was with ECAN in my absence yesterday. Was it yesterday or the day before?
With Gavin.
With Gavin around wallabies and wilding pines. So that was a meeting between Waitaki District, ECAN and ORC. And last Friday, we had a joint meeting with ECAN, Lower Waitaki River Rating Group. So, and that's been ongoing for the last sort of 6 months, getting a wee bit of an issue sorted out there. So it's actually really, they're really keen to work hand in hand. So it's a good idea of yours.
Yeah, and it was clear that the meeting that Gavin and I, and it was Andrea Howard was involved in the presentation as well, but the strong collaboration with staff as well on issues, cross-boundary issues, is really starting to become really obvious and to the fore, which is fantastic. Particularly when you're dealing with wilding pines and wallabies and those sorts of things.
Yeah, and like the farmers of South Otago, have got similar land conditions to, across the fence in the south. Like we should be learning from each other.
Yep. No, fair comment. Yep. So as Sarah's alluded to, we've got that opportunity to raise your point and get some feedback from our neighbours, and look forward to having a gathering at some point in the future. Carmen.
Just on that gathering, you could always wait till we go to Oamaru and then meet them, because it's not, it's halfway for them and we're up there, so it's just a thought.
Yep. No, thanks for that. Cool. Gretchen.
Or realistically have a Skype workshop type thing on a particular hot issue, because it is going to be hard to pull people together, and perhaps even have particular councils prepare in advance a presentation or something quickly and on a specific discrete topic.
Right, that sounds good. Okay, we've done and dusted. I'll move that we receive Sarah's report, seconded by Brian. Any discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Moving on to item 10, report back from councillors. We've got 2 reports here, one from Hilary and one from Alexa. I'll go to Alexa first, just to see whether you want to make any comment, Alexa, and then I'll go to Hilary.
I think it's pretty self-explanatory, and Hilary has talked more about the bus meeting that I think I referred to. I might have forgotten, but it's in there. So it was a lot of stuff on. There's some. I tried to capture some of the feeling of some of those meetings. So it's pretty much just as I've written.
Thank you, Hilary.
With the bus meeting, I've just forwarded round a slightly more fulsome version of the meeting we had, which I found really useful. The carbon footprint note I've got there, I thought it would be really good if we could invite Beef and Lamb to come and talk to us about and send us their report that they commissioned from wherever, some independent source or another, and talk to us about the work they're doing about what's happening on their farms, because I think it sort of ties into where our thinking's going, and to get an understanding of something that isn't necessarily quite exactly sort of the same sort of measurements. It is measurable, but it's not the same sort of necessarily, doesn't fit into a template, I don't think. But I would love for us to invite them along, ask them to send their report, as it were, in advance and come and talk to us, either if they sent it in advance, we wouldn't need so long, maybe either as a short workshop or at the beginning of a council meeting, giving them longer than we usually do for people who come and make presentations. And they said they would be more than happy to come along and talk to us. Is that something we could do, Chair?
Excellent. Sarah?
Yep.
That's
what you're after.
Sounds a good plan. So you'll just liaise with Beef and Lamb to...
Yeah, and get, maybe they'll end up talking to you and whatever.
Okay.
Probably the best thing is if you give us a contact, we can do that for you, if you like.
Okay,
perfect.
Cool.
Perfect. Thank you. We don't note the report. Yeah, no, that's cool. Carmen.
I haven't had a computer actually for a few weeks because it's been here getting fixed after the wind. Something went wrong and we haven't had it. So, but I just wanted to say, could I just talk about quickly the harbour night that we had down at Brighton?
Absolutely.
And there's one again this Monday for the Harbour Master. Look, it was absolutely amazing. There would have been probably 200 people plus, which they didn't want the ODT to know because the room was at full capacity and overflowing. But it was a really interesting night where you had them saying, look, this is the problem with the bar here out at Torrey Mouth. There's a problem. Basically, if it doesn't look good, don't go out. If you're unsure, stay at home. They've decided they're going to see if they can put a notice board up at the fishing part of the place where you actually go out at Torrey Mouth to show what the weather's like. The other thing was if there's in doubt and the boats are tied up, that tells you to stay. But there were some really clever questions. One of the dive companies, is it Dive HQ or whatever it's called, said, look, if we get into trouble, where do we go? And they had a big aerial map of the Torrey Mouth and the bar and everything and said, look, you need to be here. But if you're here, by now you should have already made that emergency call to somebody to say that you are in a bit of trouble and you need, you're parking up, was very good. The harbour master and deputy were fabulous. They had packs that they gave away, they gave good talks, but the thing that irked me the most that they never put in the ODT was the fact that our new bylaws tell you have to have some lettering or numbering on your boat. Nobody knew that. And I'd love us to see us do more with that. And we have a great website, but we should have a little boat floating along the bottom that says, have you got your number on? Nobody in the room practically knew of those 200 people. It was a very, very good night, but that was sadly lacking, and it was sadly lacking in the ODT, and it actually made me quite cross because it was really critical. And the other thing they didn't put in the paper, which they did go into detail, was checking the life jackets, saying if they're inflatable, this is what you should be looking for, and it was brilliant. It was really well done. So I can't go this week, I'm sorry, because I've got to go to Queenstown, but if anyone can go to that on Monday, if you can get along to it at Brighton, it would be really good to have someone from the council representing. The harbour master and deputy will be there again. Because it's so popular, they ran it, but very, very good.
Thanks for that, Carmen. Sarah's just reminded me about the centre parade. You mentioned the harbour master. Now, this just remind me what day the centre parade is. A couple of weeks' time.
2 weeks' time, I think.
2 weeks' time. They'll be part of the float procession, and
the boat's in it.
Kit and Paglish.
Boat your boat.
There'll be an opportunity for any councillors to be involved. And I sense that Brian is volunteering.
No, I don't think so.
The Christmas or an elf.
I'll certainly be volunteering, providing you volunteer, Brian.
What are you going to dress up or something?
I just thought you could walk beside the boat.
I will.
You can ride on
I will
the
have.
boat.
I will have my ORC jacket on, and so will you. That's fair enough. But any councillor, seriously, any councilor that's
Seriously, you're going to do
interested.
it.
Beg your pardon?
Are you going to do it?
Yes.
So what's the date, sorry?
Well done.
What is the date?
Okay. I'm not sure.
I will find out.
Ryan, can you please find out for us? Thank you.
HMS noon.
Careful. Okay, we better concentrate. So no other queries or questions for Hilary or Alexa? Moving on. So it's now time to move into to exclude the public. So the public be excluded under Lagoima section 48(1)A from discussions of the following items being consideration of the minutes, the public excluded council meeting on the 28th of October 2020, plus amendments to the ORC delegations manual and also the draft regional policy statement. And I will move that way, seconded by Carmen. Any discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.